His wife took everything in the divorce, but just hours after the Marine returned to his abandoned family home, his canine stopped at the door and refused to let him walk inside alone. When Michael Hayes left the courthouse that night, he had nothing left. 30 years of marriage were erased in a single decision. The house, the savings, the life he thought would last, gone. All that remained was an old pickup truck, a fading past, and the one partner who never turned away. His German shepherd, Rex. With nowhere else to go, Michael drove back to a forgotten house on the edge of a dead city district. He thought he came back to disappear. But inside that house, something was already waiting. And what he was about to find would pull him into a truth far bigger than anything he had lost. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching this story from today? Rain fell in steady gray sheets over the courthouse parking lot, turning the asphalt into a dull mirror of a sky that refused to break. Michael Hayes stepped out beneath that sky like a man already erased. At 55, he still carried the posture of a U.S. Marine. Broad shoulders, straight spine, the quiet discipline of someone who had spent decades obeying orders without question. But time and war had carved their mark into him. His dark brown hair, once thick and close-cropped, had faded into streaks of gray at the temples, and a rough stubble framed a face lined by years of desert heat, sleepless nights, and memories he never spoke about. A faint scar ran along his jawline, a souvenir from a roadside explosion in Fallujah, the same blast that had ended his active duty and left his right knee permanently damaged. That injury had not just changed the way he walked, it had changed the way he lived. He moved slower now, more deliberate, like a man who had learned that every step might cost something. He paused beside the old pickup truck that waited alone in the far corner of the lot. It was a weathered Ford, paint peeling along the sides, rust creeping along the wheel wells, the kind of vehicle that had outlived its purpose but refused to die. Inside, sitting upright in the passenger seat, was the only living thing that had not turned away from him. Rex. The German shepherd was 7 years old, large and powerfully built, with a sable coat of black and deep brown that still held a dull sheen even under the rain. His ears stood alert, and his amber eyes followed Michael with an intensity that bordered on human understanding. A faint scar cut through the fur on his left ear, barely visible unless the light hit it just right. He had earned that scar during training, back when he had refused to release a suspect until Michael gave the command. The trainers had called him stubborn. Michael had called him loyal. Michael opened the truck door and climbed in, the seat creaking beneath his weight. For a moment, he said nothing. The rain tapped softly against the windshield, a quiet rhythm that filled the silence between man and dog. Rex leaned forward and rested his head gently against Michael's shoulder, warm and steady, as if grounding him to something real. "Well," Michael muttered, his voice low and rough from disuse, "guess it's just us now." Rex's tail thumped once against the seat. Michael started the engine. It coughed, protested, then finally turned over with a tired growl. He pulled out of the lot without looking back at the courthouse. There was nothing left there for him. 30 years of marriage had ended in less than an hour, reduced to signatures and legal language. The house was gone. The savings were gone. The life he had built, every shared memory, every quiet routine, had been divided and reassigned like equipment on a checklist. His ex-wife, Lisa Hayes, had walked away with everything that could be measured in numbers. She had always been precise like that. Lisa was a woman of sharp edges and sharper decisions, in her early 50s, tall and slender, with ash-blonde hair always kept perfectly styled, her pale skin untouched by time or worry, her gray eyes cold in a way that made people listen when she spoke. She had once admired Michael's strength, his discipline, the way he carried himself like something unbreakable. But after the injury, after the long years of silence and distance, that admiration had turned into something else, something closer to disappointment. The city blurred past as Michael drove, buildings rising and falling like forgotten monuments. He didn't turn on the radio. He didn't check his phone. There was no one left to call. Rex sat quietly beside him, watching the road, occasionally glancing at Michael as if making sure he was still there, still holding together. An hour passed, then another. By the time the streets narrowed and the traffic thinned, the sky had begun to darken further, clouds gathering low and heavy. Michael turned off the main road and onto a cracked stretch of asphalt that led toward the industrial outskirts of the city. The area had been abandoned years ago when factories closed and businesses moved on, leaving behind empty buildings and silent streets. It was the kind of place people forgot existed. It was also the only place Michael had left. The house appeared at the end of the road, partially hidden behind overgrown weeds and a sagging chain-link fence. It had once belonged to his father, a quiet man who had spent most of his life working with his hands and saying very little. The house itself was small, a single-story structure with faded blue paint and a porch that leaned slightly to one side. The windows were dirty, the roof missing a few shingles, and the yard had long since surrendered to neglect. But it was still standing. Michael parked the truck and sat there for a moment, staring at it. "This is it," he said quietly. Rex tilted his head, then jumped down from the truck as soon as the door opened. The dog moved immediately into the yard, nose low to the ground, scanning, analyzing, alert. Michael followed more slowly, his knee protesting with every step. The air smelled of damp earth and rust, a sharp contrast to the sterile coldness of the courthouse. He climbed the porch steps, each one creaking beneath his weight, and reached for the door. It wasn't locked. That alone made him pause. Michael pushed it open slowly. The hinges groaned, the sound echoing through the empty interior. Dust hung in the air, drifting in thin beams of gray light that filtered through the windows. The living room was exactly as he remembered. Old furniture covered in sheets, a small table near the wall, a fireplace that hadn't been used in years. He stepped inside. The floor creaked beneath his boots. Behind him, Rex entered without hesitation, moving past Michael and into the room with a quiet, controlled urgency. The dog's posture changed immediately, no longer relaxed, but focused, tense. His ears twitched, catching sounds too faint for human hearing. He moved toward the kitchen, then stopped. A low growl formed in his throat. Michael frowned. "What is it, boy?" Rex didn't answer, of course. He stepped forward, sniffing the air, then lowered his head toward the floor. Michael followed his gaze. There, faint but unmistakable, were footprints. Not old, not covered in dust. Fresh. Michael's chest tightened slightly. He moved further into the kitchen. The sink held a single metal can, recently opened, the edges still clean. On the counter sat a small, portable radio, its surface free of dust, the battery compartment slightly warm to the touch when Michael reached out and pressed his fingers against it. Someone had been here. Recently. Michael straightened slowly, his eyes scanning the room with a different kind of awareness now. The kind that came from years of training, of learning how to read a space, how to feel danger before it revealed itself. This wasn't abandonment. This was occupation. Rex let out another low growl, deeper this time, and turned his head toward the hallway leading further into the house. Michael followed his gaze. The darkness beyond the hallway felt heavier than it should have. For the first time since leaving the courthouse, Michael Hayes felt something stir inside him that wasn't loss or exhaustion. It was instinct, and it was warning. Night settled over the abandoned district like a slow-moving shadow, swallowing the last traces of gray daylight and leaving the house wrapped in a silence that felt heavier than before. Michael Hayes did not turn on the main lights, old habit. Instead, he moved through the house with a small flashlight, the beam narrow and controlled, revealing only what needed to be seen. The footprints in the kitchen were still fresh in his mind, each step precise, measured. Someone small, light, not dragging their feet, but moving carefully. Not careless, not desperate. That detail bothered him more than anything else. Rex stayed close, no longer exploring freely. The German shepherd moved with a quiet intensity, his muscles tight beneath his coat, ears shifting with every faint sound. The dog's tail was low, not in fear, but in focus. This was not a home yet. It was territory to be assessed. Michael checked the windows first, all locked from the inside. The back door was reinforced with an old metal latch his father had installed years ago, still intact, no signs of forced entry. Whoever had been here had come in quietly, carefully. That meant they either had access or had been inside for a while. He moved toward the hallway. The air changed there. Cooler. Still. "Stay sharp," Michael muttered under his breath, though he wasn't sure whether he was speaking to Rex or to himself. Rex suddenly froze. Not a dramatic movement, just a subtle shift. His head tilted slightly, ears locking onto something below. Then came a sound, faint, almost nothing. A soft scrape, like fabric brushing against concrete. Michael stopped. The sound came again, from beneath the floor. "Basement," he whispered. The door was at the end of the hallway, half hidden behind a warped wooden panel. Michael approached slowly, each step deliberate, despite the dull ache rising in his knee. The closer he got, the more Rex's posture changed. His body lowered slightly, ready, but not aggressive, alert. Protective. Michael reached for the handle. It resisted at first, as if something on the other side pressed against it. Then, with a soft creak, it gave way. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. The smell hit him immediately. Damp air, old wood, and something else. Not decay, not abandonment. Something human, recent. Michael angled the flashlight downward. "Whoever's down there," he said, voice steady but firm, "you need to come out." Silence. Then a shift. Movement again. Rex stepped forward, placing himself slightly ahead of Michael, not blocking him, but positioning between him and whatever waited below. The dog let out a low, controlled rumble. Michael placed a hand gently on Rex's neck. "Easy." He took the first step down. The wood creaked under his weight. Another step. Then another. The beam of light moved slowly, revealing the bottom of the stairs, a small concrete space, scattered boxes, and in the far corner, a shape, small, curled in on itself. Michael stopped halfway down. "Hey," he said, softer now. "You're not in trouble." No response. He moved closer, the light shifting until it illuminated the figure fully. A girl. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old. Thin, almost fragile, with long brown hair tangled around her shoulders and a face pale beneath the dirt smudged across her skin. Her clothes were worn, jeans too large for her frame, a faded hoodie that had once been blue but had long since lost its color. Her eyes, wide and dark, reflected the flashlight like glass. There was no panic in them, no crying, just watching. She held something tightly in her hand, a piece of paper, crumpled from being gripped too hard. Michael crouched slowly, lowering himself despite the protest in his knee. "What's your name?" The girl didn't speak. Instead, she extended the paper toward him. Michael took it carefully. The handwriting was small, uneven, but clear enough. "They are looking for me." Michael's jaw tightened slightly. He glanced at Rex, then back at the girl. "How long have you been here?" No answer. The girl reached into the small backpack beside her and pulled out another piece of paper. This one took longer to write. Her hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She handed it to him. 2 days. That explained the footprints, the food, the radio. "You've been here alone for 2 days?" Michael asked quietly. The girl nodded. Up close, he could see more details now. Her lips were dry, her movements slow, careful. She wasn't just hiding, she was running out of strength. Michael exhaled slowly. "You got a name?" Another pause. Then she wrote again. "Emily." "Emily," he repeated, testing the name. "I'm Michael." Rex stepped closer, lowering himself to the ground near her. The dog's presence changed the space instantly. Not threatening, not dominant, just there. Emily hesitated, then reached out slowly, her fingers brushing against the thick fur along Rex's neck. The dog didn't move, didn't pull away, a small sign of trust. Michael noticed. "Good judge of character," he murmured. Emily didn't smile. Michael looked around the basement again. No other exits, no signs of anyone else. Just her. "You said they're looking for you," he said. "Who?" Emily's eyes shifted for the first time, not to him, to the stairs, to the house above. Then she reached into her backpack again. This time, she pulled out something different, a small electronic device, roughly the size of a phone, but thicker, scratched, worn. Not something a child would normally carry. Michael's expression hardened slightly. "Where did you get that?" Emily didn't answer. She just held it out. Michael took it. The screen flickered faintly when he pressed the side button. Not fully powered, but not dead either. He turned it over in his hand. Then he saw it. A second device, smaller, clipped to the inside of the bag. A tracker. His military instincts snapped into place immediately. "Damn it," he muttered. He reached in, pulled the tracker free, and held it up. "That's how they find you." Emily froze. Her eyes widened, not in fear of him, but in realization. She hadn't known. Michael moved quickly. He set the tracker on the concrete floor, grabbed a loose brick from the corner, and smashed it once. Then again. Plastic cracked. Circuits snapped. Rex flinched slightly at the sound, then settled. Michael exhaled slowly. "That buys us some time." Emily stared at the broken pieces, then back at him. Her hand tightened around the edge of her backpack. Michael looked at her for a long moment. He could leave. Right now. Walk back upstairs, get in the truck, drive until this place disappeared behind him. No more complications, no more danger. That would be the smart move. That would be the safe move. But Michael Hayes had never been a man who chose safety. when something else was on the line. He stood, slowly, then extended a hand toward her. "You can't stay down here," he said. "It's not safe anymore." Emily hesitated. Rex lifted his head and looked at her. Then, without a word, she reached up and took Michael's hand. It was small, cold, but steady. Michael helped her to her feet. "Come on," he said quietly. "We'll figure this out." They moved toward the stairs together, man, dog, and child. 3 lives that had collided by accident, or something that felt a lot like fate. Behind them, on the basement floor, the shattered tracker lay silent. But somewhere out there, whoever had been following that signal would soon realize it had gone dark. The house held its breath, as if it understood something had changed, as if the silence itself had begun to listen. Michael Hayes stood at the base of the stairs for a moment, after bringing Emily upstairs, his hand still resting lightly on the girl's shoulder, feeling the fragile steadiness beneath it. The broken pieces of the tracking device lay far below in the basement, but Michael knew better than to trust that destruction alone meant safety. Signals didn't just disappear without consequence. People noticed. People came looking. He moved slowly into the living room, guiding Emily with him. Rex walked ahead, scanning each corner again, nose lifting into the air, pulling in scents that hadn't yet faded. The dog's body language had shifted into something sharper now, no longer just alert, but anticipatory, like he knew something was already on its way. Michael crouched beside the old wooden table and set the electronic device Emily had carried onto its surface. Up close, under the faint glow of a small desk lamp he had managed to get working, the device looked more deliberate than he had first assumed. Its casing was reinforced, edges worn but intact, not a toy or a casual gadget. Something meant to hold value. He glanced at Emily. "This yours?" She shook her head. Michael studied her face more closely now in the dim light. Emily's features were delicate, but there was something hardened beneath them, something that didn't belong to a child her age. Her eyes didn't wander. They watched. Calculated. The kind of look you saw in people who had learned too early that the world didn't forgive mistakes. "Where did you get it?" he asked. Emily hesitated, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a small folded sheet of paper. She wrote slowly, carefully, as if every word had weight. When she handed it to him, the letters were uneven but steady. "My dad gave it to me. Said, 'Don't let anyone take it.'" Michael exhaled quietly. "Where is he now?" Another pause. Emily wrote again. "I don't know." The simplicity of it hit harder than any long explanation could have. Michael leaned back slightly, running a hand over his jaw. "What did your dad do?" Emily didn't answer right away. Her fingers tightened slightly around the pen before she wrote. "Engineer. Big company." Michael's eyes shifted briefly, something in that answer catching his attention. "What kind of company?" Emily shook her head. Didn't know, or didn't want to say. Before he could press further, Rex moved. The German shepherd's head snapped toward the front of the house, ears locking forward, body rigid. A low growl rolled from his chest, deeper than before. Not uncertain, not cautious. Certain. Michael's posture changed instantly. The Marine in him didn't hesitate. He moved to the window, lowering himself just below the frame, careful not to silhouette himself against the glass. He lifted one finger slightly toward Emily. "Stay here." Rex didn't move from his position near the doorway, eyes fixed on the outside world. Michael angled himself just enough to glance through the edge of the window. Nothing obvious. No cars. No movement. Just the empty street. Cracked pavement stretching between silent buildings. But something felt off. The kind of wrong you didn't see, you felt. He stepped back slowly. "We don't have much time." Emily watched him, silent, waiting. Michael turned his attention back to the device on the table. He pressed the power button again, holding it longer this time. The screen flickered, then dimly came to life. Lines of code and folders appearing in a crude interface. Not locked. Not encrypted in any serious way. That alone told him something. "Your dad wanted this found," Michael murmured. He navigated through the folders, his fingers moving with more familiarity than most people would expect. Years of field operations had taught him how to adapt quickly, how to learn what he needed in the moment. Files, documents, names, transactions. Michael's expression tightened. "This isn't just engineering work," he said quietly. Emily stepped closer, her small frame barely making a sound against the wooden floor. Michael opened another file, photographs, locations, coordinates tied to properties across the city. Then he saw it. People, lists of names, ages, status markers. His jaw clenched. "Human trafficking," he muttered under his breath. Emily didn't react. Either she didn't understand the words, or she understood them too well. Michael leaned back, staring at the screen for a moment longer. "Your dad didn't just build something," he said. "He found something." Emily's fingers tightened again around her sleeve. Before he could say more, the radio in the kitchen crackled. A sudden burst of static cut through the silence, sharp enough to make Emily flinch. Michael turned instantly. "That wasn't on," he said. Rex moved toward the kitchen, slow, controlled, every step measured. Michael followed, his knee protesting, but ignored. The radio sat on the counter, silent again. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a faint voice broke through the static. "Signal lost. Repeat, signal." Michael froze. The words were distorted, barely audible, but unmistakable. Communication. He stepped closer, adjusting the dial slightly. Nothing. Just static again. But it was enough. "They're looking," he said quietly. He turned back toward the living room. "We need to move soon, but not yet." Emily looked at him, waiting. Michael walked to the far wall where an old breaker panel hung partially open. He flipped one switch, then another. Nothing. Then, suddenly, a faint hum. A light flickered in the corner of the room. Rex's ears twitched again. Michael frowned. That shouldn't be working. The house had been dead when he arrived. No power, no grid connection. And yet, a soft clicking sound echoed from somewhere deeper in the walls. Michael moved slowly toward it, following the sound until it led him to a small, dusty monitor mounted high near the ceiling, something he hadn't noticed before. An old security camera system, inactive for years. Except now, it wasn't. The screen flickered, once. Twice. Then stabilized. Grainy black and white footage filled the display. Outside, the front yard. Michael's chest tightened slightly. A figure stood at the edge of the property. Tall. Still. Watching. The image was distorted, but the shape was unmistakable. A man. Standing just beyond the broken fence line, partially obscured by shadow. Not moving. Not approaching. Just there, watching the house. Michael didn't speak. Rex let out a low, controlled growl. Emily stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the screen. The figure shifted slightly. Then, as if sensing the camera, or the people behind it, It stepped back and disappeared into the darkness. The screen flickered again, then went black. The hum died. Silence returned. Michael stood there for a long moment, his mind already moving ahead, calculating, adjusting. "They found us," he said quietly. Rex stepped closer to him, pressing lightly against his leg. Emily didn't move. She didn't need to write anything this time. The truth was already in the room, and it wasn't going away. The night did not fall all at once. It crept in slowly, stretching shadows across the broken street, until the world outside the house disappeared into a quiet, watchful darkness. Michael Hayes stood near the window, unmoving, his eyes fixed on the empty space where the figure had been moments before. He did not rush. Men who rushed died first. Instead, he listened. The distant hum of wind through hollow buildings. The faint creak of metal somewhere down the street. And beneath it all, something else. Presence. "They won't come loud," he said quietly. Emily stood behind him, silent, her small hands gripping the edge of the table. She didn't ask questions anymore. She had learned quickly that answers often made things worse. Rex moved restlessly, pacing once across the room before settling near the front door, body angled toward it. His ears twitched constantly, catching sounds that never quite reached human hearing. The dog was no longer just alert. He was waiting. Michael stepped back from the window. "We don't fight them head-on," he said, mostly to himself. "We slow them down." He moved quickly now, the old instincts returning as naturally as breathing. He dragged a heavy wooden chair and wedged it beneath the door handle. Not enough to stop a determined force, but enough to buy seconds. Seconds mattered. From the kitchen, he grabbed a length of wire and tied it low across the hallway, just above ankle height. Crude, simple, but effective in the dark. A man moving too fast wouldn't see it until it was too late. He turned to Emily. "If anything happens, you stay behind me. No running unless I tell you." She nodded. Rex gave a soft huff, as if agreeing. Minutes passed. Then, a sound, not loud, not obvious. The faint crunch of gravel. Michael's head tilted slightly. "They're here." Rex's growl rose instantly, low and controlled. Another sound, closer now. A shadow moved past the window. Then another. Michael lowered himself beside the wall, keeping out of sight. He could feel his heart slowing, not racing. That was always the sign, the moment before everything broke loose, when the body stopped reacting and started calculating. The front door handle turned. Once. Twice. Then stopped. A pause. Michael held his breath. The back door creaked. Rex turned sharply, teeth bared now, the growl deepening into something dangerous. "They split," Michael whispered. The kitchen door shuddered once under pressure. Then, crash! The wood splintered inward as the door gave way. A figure stepped inside, moving fast, confident. Too fast. The wire snapped tight. The man's foot caught, and his body pitched forward violently, slamming into the floor with a dull thud. A curse followed, low and sharp. Michael didn't hesitate. He moved. Not forward, sideways. Control the space. Another figure appeared in the doorway behind the first, stepping carefully this time, learning from the mistake. Taller, broader shoulders, moving slower, smarter. "Clear the room," a voice said. Calm, controlled, familiar in a way that made something twist deep inside Michael's chest. Michael froze for a fraction of a second. That voice. No, it couldn't be. He shifted position just enough to see. The second man stepped fully into the room. He was in his early 50s, maybe a year or two younger than Michael. Tall, lean, with a frame built from years of discipline rather than bulk. His hair was cut short, dark, with streaks of gray, his face sharp and angular, marked by a thin scar that ran across the bridge of his nose. His eyes were cold, not empty, but distant, like someone who had learned to shut off everything unnecessary. Michael knew that face, even after all these years. "Carter," he said quietly. The man stopped. For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Recognition. "Hayes," Carter replied. The name hung in the air like something unfinished. For a moment, the room changed. It wasn't a broken house anymore. It was somewhere else. Dust, heat, gunfire echoing across open ground. Two men moving side by side, trusting each other without question. Then it snapped back. Carter's eyes hardened again. "Didn't expect to find you here," he said. Michael stepped into the open slowly, not raising his hands, not reaching for anything, just standing. "You were declared missing," Michael said. 3 years ago." Carter shrugged slightly. "Paperwork." There was no humor in it. The first man on the floor groaned, pushing himself up, dazed. Carter didn't even look at him. "Get up," he said flatly. The man scrambled to his feet, avoiding Carter's gaze. Michael's eyes didn't leave Carter. "You working for them now?" Carter's expression didn't change. "I'm working." "That's not what I asked." Silence. Then Carter's gaze shifted slightly, past Michael, to Emily. Rex stepped forward instantly, placing himself between them, teeth bared. Carter watched the dog for a moment. "Still keeping strays, huh?" Michael didn't respond. Carter looked back at him. "We're not here for you." "I figured." "Then don't make this complicated." Michael's jaw tightened. "That's not going to happen." Carter took a slow step forward, not aggressive, not rushed, measured. "You hand the girl over," he said, voice even. "You walk away. No one follows you. No one comes back." Emily's hand tightened on the edge of Michael's jacket. Rex's growl deepened. Michael didn't move. "No," he said. Just one word, but it landed heavier than anything else in the room. The silence that followed stretched tight. Carter studied him for a long moment, as if searching for something that wasn't there anymore. "You always had a problem with orders," he said quietly. Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. "Funny. I remember it the other way around." For a brief second, something almost like a memory crossed Carter's face. Then it was gone. "Last chance," Carter said. Michael shifted his weight slightly, angling his body just enough to block the line between Carter and Emily. "I'm not giving you the kid." Rex stepped forward, and that was enough. The tension snapped. The first man lunged forward. Michael moved instantly, not toward him, but to the side, pulling him off balance, redirecting the momentum. The man crashed into the wall, the impact knocking the breath from his lungs. Rex launched forward, not attacking blindly, but forcing space, driving the second figure back toward the doorway with a sharp bark and snapping jaws. Carter didn't move. He watched, calculated, then raised a hand slightly. "Enough!" The others froze. Rex didn't. He held his ground, teeth bared, body rigid. Carter's eyes shifted between Michael and the dog. Then, slowly, he stepped back. "This isn't over," he said. Michael didn't answer. Carter turned toward the broken door, pausing just long enough to glance over his shoulder. "You don't know what you're standing in the middle of," he added. Michael's voice was quiet. "Then tell me." Carter shook his head once. "We're just the front line." The words settled into the room, like something far heavier than a threat. Then he was gone. The others followed. Silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as before. Michael stood there, breathing slow, controlled, his eyes still fixed on the doorway. Rex remained in front of him, unmoving. Emily didn't speak. She didn't need to, because now they all understood. This wasn't just a chase. It was something much bigger, and it had only just begun. The house did not feel like shelter anymore. It felt like a line drawn in the dirt, one that could not be erased once it had been crossed. Michael Hayes stood over the table, the glow from the small lamp casting hard shadows across his face as he stared at the device Emily had brought with her. Outside, the night had settled deeper, but after the confrontation, silence no longer meant safety. It meant waiting. And Michael knew men like Carter did not wait long. Rex lay near the doorway, but not resting. The German shepherd's body remained tense, his ears flicking at every distant sound, his eyes occasionally lifting toward Michael, as if checking for the next command. The dog's breathing was steady, controlled, but beneath it lived a readiness that had never truly left him since the days of training and deployment. He was not just a companion. He was a partner who understood danger before it arrived. Emily sat across the table, small hands folded in her lap, her posture rigid but composed. She had stopped shaking, not because she felt safe, but because she had reached the point where fear no longer helped. Michael pressed a button on the device again. This time, he didn't hesitate. The screen flickered to life fully, its dim interface revealing layers of stored information. He navigated slowly, deliberately, not rushing through what might be the only real advantage they had. Folders opened. Files expanded. Names. Dates. Numbers. The deeper he went, the colder his expression became. "This isn't just evidence," he said quietly. "It's a map." Emily watched him carefully, reading his face more than his words. Michael opened a document labeled with a string of numbers instead of a name. Inside were transaction records, large sums of money moving between shell companies, routed through construction firms and development projects scattered across the city. At first glance, it looked legitimate. On the surface, everything was clean. But Michael had spent enough years watching how things broke to understand how they were hidden. "Real estate," he muttered. "They're using development sites as cover." He clicked into another file. Photographs appeared, low resolution, time-stamped, taken from a distance. Buildings, vans, people being moved from one place to another. Some images were blurred, but the patterns were clear. Controlled movement, hidden routes. Michael's jaw tightened. "This isn't small," he said. "This is organized." Emily lowered her eyes. Michael paused, then looked at her. "Your father, he worked inside this?" She nodded slowly. He leaned back slightly, running a hand through his hair. "He didn't just find it. He documented it." Emily reached for a piece of paper, writing quickly this time. "He said they were hurting people, said someone had to stop it." Michael read the words, then nodded once. He was right. But being right had cost him. Michael opened another folder. This one was different. Internal documents, legal reviews, risk assessments, names of individuals tied to the operation, not the workers on the ground, but the ones above them, the ones who didn't get their hands dirty. Michael scrolled slowly, then stopped. For a moment, he didn't move at all. Rex noticed first. The dog lifted his head slightly, watching Michael more closely now. Emily frowned faintly. Michael's hand tightened around the edge of the table. "No," he said under his breath. He leaned closer to the screen. The name didn't change. It didn't disappear. It stayed there, cold and exact. Lisa Hayes. The letters felt heavier than anything else he had seen so far. Emily looked at him, confused. Michael didn't answer her right away. His mind had already moved somewhere else, back to the courthouse, to the cold expression on Lisa's face, to the way she had spoken about assets and value, as if life itself could be reduced to numbers on paper. He had thought he understood her. He realized now he had not. Michael exhaled slowly, forcing himself back into the present. "She's involved," he said quietly. Emily didn't need clarification. "She's part of the legal team," he continued, his voice steady again, but colder. "Not running it, but protecting it." That made it worse, in a different way. Lisa wasn't just connected, she knew. Michael leaned back, his eyes unfocused for a moment. He remembered the years after his injury, how she had grown distant, frustrated, how she had built her own world of control and precision, while he struggled to find footing in a life that no longer had structure. She had always believed in systems, in order, in winning. Maybe this was just another system to her, another equation. Rex stood and moved closer, pressing lightly against Michael's leg. Michael placed a hand on the dog's head, grounding himself. "All right," he said after a moment. "That changes things." Emily watched him, waiting. Michael looked back at the screen, then at the girl. "Running isn't going to fix this," he said. "They'll keep coming. Not just for you. For anyone who knows." Emily swallowed, then nodded. Michael reached into his jacket and pulled out an old phone. Not his main one. He had left that behind hours ago without even realizing it. This was a backup, something he rarely used. He powered it on. Slow. Outdated. But it worked. He scrolled through the contacts until he found a name. Daniel Reed. Michael hesitated for a fraction of a second before pressing call. The line rang. Once. Twice. Then clicked. A voice answered, low and cautious. "You picked a bad time to disappear, Hayes." Michael let out a quiet breath. "Good to hear you too, Reed." Daniel Reed was a man in his early 60s, though his voice carried the weight of someone older. He had once been a war correspondent, thin, sharp-featured, with a permanent crease between his brows and a beard that had long since turned more gray than black. Years of chasing conflict zones had carved a kind of restless vigilance into him. He trusted very little, but he listened. "What do you want?" Reed asked. Michael glanced at the device on the table. "I've got something you need to see." A pause. "What kind of something?" Michael's eyes shifted briefly to Emily, then back to the screen. "The kind that gets people killed." Another pause. Longer this time. "Where are you?" Reed asked. "Can't say yet," Michael replied, "but I can send you a piece of it." "Do it fast," Reed said. "And Hayes, if this is what I think it is, you don't have much time." The line went dead. Michael set the phone down. Emily watched him, her expression unreadable. "Who was that?" she wrote. "A man who tells the truth," Michael said, "even when it costs him." Rex shifted again, moving toward the window, his posture tightening. Michael followed his gaze instinctively. Nothing visible, but that feeling again, closer now. He turned back to the device, quickly selecting a compressed file, initiating a transfer through the phone. The progress bar moved slowly. Too slowly. "Hurry up," he muttered. Emily sat still, her eyes fixed on the screen. Rex let out a low growl. Michael didn't look up this time. He didn't need to. "They're coming back," he said. The progress bar hit halfway, then stalled. Michael's jaw tightened. "Come on." Outside, somewhere in the distance, a car engine rumbled faintly. Not loud, not fast, but approaching. Michael looked at Emily. "Whatever happens next," he said, "we don't stop." Emily nodded. The screen flickered. The file pushed forward again. And in that small, dimly lit room, 3 lives stood on the edge of something that was no longer just about survival. It was about truth, and the cost of carrying it. The engine outside did not roar or rush. It approached like a decision already made, slow and inevitable, tires crunching lightly over broken gravel, as if the night itself had cleared a path for it. Michael Hayes stood still beside the table, eyes fixed on the dim glow of the device as the file transfer stuttered, paused, then froze entirely. The signal had been cut. Not interrupted, blocked. His jaw tightened, but he did not curse. Men like him learned long ago that anger wasted time, and time was something he no longer had. "They shut it down," he said quietly. Emily watched the screen, her fingers curled tightly together, the faint light reflecting in her eyes. She didn't panic. She simply understood. Rex moved first. The German shepherd stepped away from the window and positioned himself directly in front of Michael, his body angled toward the front door, muscles coiled beneath his thick coat. His ears locked forward, and a low, controlled growl vibrated in his chest. Not loud, not frantic, but certain. Whoever was outside now was not just watching anymore. They had come to finish it. Michael exhaled slowly and reached down, resting his hand on Rex's back. "Easy," he murmured. "Not yet." The knock came then. Not violent, not rushed. 3 deliberate strikes against the door. Michael didn't move immediately. He listened. No voices, no scrambling footsteps, no attempt to break in, just waiting. That told him everything he needed to know. "This isn't Carter," he said quietly. Emily looked at him. Michael stepped forward slowly, removing the chair braced beneath the door, his movements measured, controlled. Rex shifted slightly, staying close enough that his shoulder brushed against Michael's leg. Another knock, softer this time. Michael opened the door. Lisa Hayes stood on the porch. For a moment, the world narrowed into something smaller than the space between them. Lisa looked exactly as she had that morning in the courthouse, composed, precise, untouched by the chaos around her. She wore a long, dark coat, tailored to fit her tall, slender frame, the fabric still clean despite the dust and decay surrounding the house. Her ash-blonde hair was pulled back neatly, not a strand out of place, and her pale skin held that same cold clarity Michael remembered too well. Her gray eyes, sharp and observant, moved past him for only a fraction of a second, taking in the interior of the house before returning to his face. She looked like someone who had never belonged in a place like this, and yet here she was. "Michael," she said, her voice calm, almost neutral. He didn't step aside. "Lisa." Neither of them smiled. Neither of them moved closer. Behind Michael, Rex's growl deepened slightly, low enough that it might have gone unnoticed by anyone else. Lisa's eyes flicked down briefly to the dog, then back up. "Still loyal," she said. "He always was," Michael replied. A pause settled between them. Then Lisa spoke again. We need to talk. Michael let out a slow breath. I figured. He stepped back just enough to allow her inside, but not enough to lower his guard. Lisa walked past him without hesitation, her heels barely making a sound against the wooden floor. She moved through the room like she owned it, not in arrogance, but in certainty. It was the same way she had walked through every space in her life. Controlled, purposeful. Rex shifted immediately, placing himself between her and Emily, his body a silent barrier. Lisa noticed. "Is that her?" she asked, her tone unchanged. Michael didn't answer. Lisa stopped a few feet from the table, her gaze settling briefly on the device still lying there. For the first time, something in her expression shifted, not emotion, not quite, but recognition. "So it's true," she said softly. Michael crossed his arms. "You tell me." Lisa looked at him again, her eyes sharper now. "You have no idea what you're holding." "I've got a pretty good idea." "Not enough." Michael took a step closer. "Then explain it." Lisa studied him for a moment, as if weighing how much to say. Then she exhaled slowly, the first crack in her composure. "That device," she said, nodding toward the table, "contains information tied to several ongoing development projects. Projects backed by investors who do not tolerate disruption." Michael's eyes narrowed. "Call it what it is." Lisa didn't flinch. "It's a network." "Human trafficking," he said flatly. The word hung in the air. Lisa didn't deny it. "That's only part of it," she said quietly. Michael felt something shift inside him, not surprise, but confirmation. "And you're protecting them." "I was," Lisa corrected. Michael's jaw tightened. "That's supposed to make it better?" Lisa didn't respond immediately. Instead, she walked slowly toward the window, looking out into the darkness beyond the glass. For the first time since she had arrived, her posture changed slightly, not weaker, but heavier. "You think this is simple," she said. "You think there's a clean line between right and wrong." "There is," Michael said. "You just stepped over it." Lisa closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. "6 months ago, I believed I was stepping into something controlled, predictable. I thought I was aligning myself with people who understood how the world actually works." Michael said nothing. Lisa turned back to him. "I invested everything, Michael. Not just money. Reputation. Connections. Everything I built after you left the service." Michael's expression didn't change. "I didn't leave. I got blown up." Lisa's gaze faltered for a fraction of a second, then steadied. "And after that," she said, "you stopped fighting." The words landed harder than any accusation. Michael didn't react outwardly, but something in his eyes darkened. "I adapted," he said quietly. Lisa shook her head slightly. "No, you retreated." Silence stretched between them. Rex shifted his weight, pressing closer to Michael. Lisa exhaled again, this time slower. "It doesn't matter anymore," she said. "What matters is this." She gestured toward the device. "That data is worth more than anything either of us has left," she continued. "To the wrong people, it's leverage. To the right people, it's a weapon." Michael tilted his head slightly. "And to you?" Lisa met his eyes. "It's survival." Emily moved slightly behind Rex, her presence small but undeniable. Michael looked at her, then back at Lisa. "You want me to hand it over?" "Yes." "And in return?" "You walk away," Lisa said. You and the girl. No one follows. No one comes back. Michael almost smiled. You think I believe that? Lisa's expression didn't change. I think you understand that this doesn't end well if you don't. Michael took a step closer, closing the distance between them. It doesn't end well anyway. Rex's growl rose again, louder this time. Lisa glanced at the dog, then back at Michael. I'm not your enemy, she said. Michael's voice dropped. You stood in a courtroom and took everything I had. Lisa's gaze hardened slightly. I took what I needed to survive. And now? A pause, then, quietly, I'm still trying to. That was the moment everything shifted. Not dramatically, not visibly, but enough. Michael studied her face, not the controlled version she showed the world, but the edges beneath it, the tension in her jaw, the faint shadows under her eyes, the way her hands remained still, not because she was calm, but because she refused to show otherwise. You lost it, didn't you? He said. Lisa didn't answer. You lost everything with them, he continued. Her silence was answer enough. Michael exhaled slowly. So now you're here to trade one last thing. Lisa's voice was quieter now. I'm here because I don't have any other options. Rex stepped forward again, placing himself firmly between them. Michael rested his hand on the dog's neck. Then he shook his head. No, he said. Lisa's eyes narrowed slightly. Michael? No, he repeated, firmer this time. I'm not giving you that device. Silence fell again. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply stood there, unmovable. For the first time since she had arrived, Lisa looked uncertain. Not defeated, not broken, just unsure. Michael stepped back slightly, his hand still resting on Rex. You want to survive? He said quietly. Then stop protecting them. Lisa held his gaze for a long moment. Then, without another word, she turned, walked toward the door, paused just before stepping outside. They're not going to stop, she said without looking back. Michael didn't respond. Lisa stepped into the night. The door closed behind her, and the silence that followed was heavier than anything that had come before. Dawn did not arrive with light, but with a slow thinning of darkness, as if the night itself had finally decided to loosen its grip on the world. Michael Hayes stood by the window, watching the faint gray horizon stretch across the abandoned street. The house was quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet as before. This one felt earned, temporary, like the pause between two storms. Behind him, Emily sat on the edge of the worn couch, her small frame wrapped in an old blanket Michael had found in one of the cabinets. She hadn't slept much. Neither had he. Rex lay at her feet, his large body still but not fully at rest, ears twitching now and then, guarding even in silence. The bond between the three of them had shifted overnight, from strangers forced together into something closer to a fragile unit. Michael turned back toward the table. The device was still there, the last piece that tied everything together. Lisa's words echoed in his mind, not as threats, but as warnings. They wouldn't stop. Not the people behind this. Not the system that had already swallowed too many lives to turn back now. He picked up the device again, his fingers tracing its edges. There's another way, he said quietly. Emily looked up. Michael walked to the corner of the room where an old electrical panel hung, wires exposed behind a cracked metal cover. He studied it for a moment, then crouched down, reaching inside. His movements were careful, practiced, not the speed of panic, but the precision of someone who had spent years working with systems that could fail if handled wrong. "Your dad built this to survive," he said, more to himself than to her. "That means redundancy." Emily didn't understand the word, but she understood the tone. Michael followed the wiring, tracing it across the wall until it led to a secondary line, older, thinner, almost hidden beneath years of dust. A backup connection, not tied to the main grid, not something easily shut down from outside. "Smart man," Michael muttered. He moved quickly now, reconnecting the line, forcing power through circuits that hadn't been used in years. Sparks flickered once, briefly illuminating the room, then settled. The small device in his hand vibrated faintly. Signal. Weak, but enough. Michael grabbed the phone and reconnected it to the device. The file transfer resumed, slow, unstable, but moving. "Come on," he whispered. Rex lifted his head, sensing the shift in Michael's focus. Minutes passed like hours. Then, a soft tone. "Transfer complete." Michael exhaled, a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "It's out," he said. Emily's shoulders dropped slightly, the tension easing just a fraction. Michael didn't celebrate. He knew better. Sending the data was only the beginning. He powered the device down and removed its internal storage, slipping it into his pocket. "Now we move," he said. Emily nodded immediately. They didn't pack much. There wasn't much to take. A small bag for Emily, a few essentials for Michael. Rex stayed close, watching every movement, as if memorizing the plan. They stepped outside just as the first light broke across the horizon. The city looked different in the morning, less threatening, but no less dangerous. Michael didn't head for the main road. He moved through the back streets, avoiding open spaces, guiding Emily with a steady hand while Rex ranged slightly ahead, checking corners, scanning for movement. They reached the truck. Michael opened the door, helping Emily inside before circling around to the driver's seat. Rex jumped in after her, settling immediately, but keeping his gaze fixed on the surroundings. The engine started on the first try. Michael pulled away. No one followed. Not yet. Miles passed. The abandoned district gave way to quieter roads, then to the edges of the city. The tension didn't leave Michael's body, but it shifted from immediate danger to something longer, heavier. Consequences. The phone buzzed. Michael glanced at it, then answered without slowing. "Reed." Daniel Reed's voice came through, sharper now, more alert than before. "You weren't exaggerating." Michael kept his eyes on the road. "You got it?" "I got all of it," Reed said. "And I already pushed part of it out." Michael's grip on the wheel tightened slightly. "That was fast." "I don't sit on things like this," Reed replied. "It's already moving through the right channels. Federal, investigative, media. This is big, Hayes. Bigger than you think." Michael didn't respond. He already knew. "They're going to come after you," Reed added. "Not just the people you saw last night, the ones above them. They already did." A pause. Then Reed spoke again, quieter this time. "You did the right thing." Michael let out a slow breath. "We'll see." The line went silent for a moment before Reed continued. "There's more, though." Michael frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "There are other cases," Reed said. "Names in the files you sent. Some of them match missing persons reports that were never closed. Kids, families. This isn't just one operation. It's a network." Michael's jaw tightened. Emily shifted slightly in the passenger seat, watching him. "They're still out there," Reed continued. "And now that this is public, things are going to get messy." Michael nodded once, even though Reed couldn't see him. "They already are." Another pause. Then, "Hayes," Reed said, his tone changing slightly, more deliberate now. "People are going to need someone who understands this, someone who knows how to move through it." Michael didn't answer right away. He looked ahead, the road stretching forward, uncertain but open. Beside him, Emily sat quietly, her small hands resting in her lap. Rex's head was pressed lightly against her leg, the dog's presence steady, grounding. Michael had lost everything, and yet he wasn't alone. He exhaled slowly. "I'm not going back to what I was." "I'm not asking you to," Reed replied. "I'm asking what you're going to be now." The line went quiet again. Michael ended the call. He drove in silence for a while, the weight of the question settling into something deeper than thought. Behind them, the city began to wake. Somewhere within it, arrests were being made, doors being opened, names being called out loud for the first time. Carter would be among them. Michael knew that without needing confirmation. Lisa, too, would face what came next. Not destruction, but exposure. Loss of control. The kind of consequence she had spent her life avoiding. But that wasn't his concern anymore. He kept driving. Hours later, the city was nothing more than a shape on the horizon. Michael pulled the truck over near a quiet stretch of road, surrounded by open land that felt untouched, unclaimed. He turned off the engine. Silence returned. Not heavy this time, just still. Emily looked at him. Michael rested his hands on the wheel, then finally spoke. "We don't go back," he said. She nodded. Rex shifted slightly, as if agreeing. Michael opened the door and stepped out. The air cooler here, cleaner. He walked a few steps away from the truck, looking out across the empty land. For the first time in a long time, there was no one chasing him. No one waiting. Just space. Possibility. Behind him, the truck door opened. Emily stepped out, Rex following close beside her. She walked toward Michael, stopping just a few feet away, not asking, just standing there. Michael looked down at her, then at Rex. "You ready?" he asked quietly. Emily didn't write this time. She simply nodded. Rex's tail moved once. Michael gave a small, almost invisible smile. "All right," he said. And for the first time since the courthouse, he meant it. Sometimes miracles don't arrive as light from the sky. They come quietly, through loyalty, through a hand that refuses to let go, through a soul that chooses good when it would be easier to walk away. Michael lost everything he thought mattered, yet in that emptiness, God placed something greater before him: purpose, protection, and a second chance to stand for what is right. In our daily lives, we may not face the same battles, but we all reach moments where we must choose: fear or faith, silence or truth, giving up or standing firm. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it, leave a comment, and subscribe so more people can be reminded that hope still exists. May God bless you, guide you through your struggles, and bring light into every dark place you walk through.